The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar, Predictive Retention, How to Know Before They Go. We are delighted to be here on this call, sharing some insights from Dr. Sherry Feinzig and myself, Linda Janak. We're going to ask that you please feel free to ask questions as we go. We are going to hold answering those questions until the end of the webinar. And this webinar is being recorded, so please, check our website, tomorrow. So if you want to download it and have it for future reference, you can do that. And Sherry, why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Linda. So Sherry Feinzig, I am with IBM, and I lead our global talent management consulting team, as well as our Smarter Workforce Institute, which is our research arm. And I'm delighted to be here today and share with you some of our latest research.
Excellent. And again, I'm Linda Janak. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of TalentGuard, Inc., a cloud-based talent management software company.
Okay, and again, thanks to everyone for joining today. What we're going to be covering is our latest research into why people choose to leave their jobs, some practical guidance based on the research on how to retain your talent, and in particular your top talent, a comprehensive approach to predicting turnover and improving retention. We're going to talk a bit about the special impact and role of meaningful work in retaining people, and finally, the motivating role of career development. So our Smarter Workforce Institute at IBM has just released a paper on why people leave their jobs. And again, really excited to share this latest research with you today, and we'll go through some of the highlights. The full paper can be downloaded from our website. You can search Smarter Workforce Institute, or you can click on the link for this paper from the document. So when we undertook this research study, we wanted to consider two sets of factors that impact when people decide whether they want to take a new job or stay where they are. So specifically, the attraction factors, things that would actually pull people towards something new, as well as the retention factors. So what are the things that people consider when they're deciding whether they want to stay where they are? And we will start with the retention factors. So this study is based on a large sample survey. We surveyed over 22,000 people around the globe, 45 countries and territories, across multiple industries, job families, et cetera. And what we found, the first question that we wanted to answer was how many people across that large sample are actually thinking about taking a new job? And what we found is that 16% of our sample said that they're actively looking for a new job now, and an additional 46% said while they're not actively looking for a job, they would consider one if a good opportunity came along. So 62% in total who could be tempted to take a new job. Just over a third said, no, I'm not looking and I wouldn't consider a new job at this time. So we wanted to take a look at career stage or generation to see if there are any differences in the percentage of people who said that they were looking for jobs or interested in potentially taking a new one. And what we found is kind of predictable to where people are in their life stage. So we did find that when we look at the younger generations, the millennials, they are somewhat more likely to be actively looking and also willing to consider a new job, 70% in total. When we look at the Generation Xers, they are somewhat less likely, and then even more so with baby boomers. So again, kind of predictable and expected, but we believe this is really reflecting more of where people are in their career stage than something fundamentally unique about the different generations. So then we wanted to step back and say, okay, we know how many people roughly are looking for a new job or would consider taking one, the so-called passive candidates who aren't necessarily looking, but they could be tempted away to something new. And we wanted to understand what are those factors that would actually attract people to a new opportunity. And what we found is a common set of factors tends to rise to the top of the list. So across the board, people cited the number one reason was for better compensation and benefits. People will be tempted to towards a new job, a new opportunity, if it's going to pay them more. People also are tempted by better career development opportunities. They want to be able to use their existing skills, put those skills to good use, and job security is a common attractor for people as well. Now, we wanted to see if there are any differences between your average employee and those that are considered top talent. So as part of our research, we asked people, have you been designated in your organization's formal top talent program? And we're able to separate those responses out from the others. And what we found is, again, those top attractors were the same for top talent as well as for other employees. Where we started to see some differences is in the area of wanting to further develop and expand their capabilities for the top talent. So opportunities to learn new skills, to take on more job responsibilities, to try something new. Those factors were significantly more important for the top talent than for the other employees. And these are presumably your most important people, the ones that you really don't want to be attracted away to something else. So important to keep that in mind. Okay, so then going back to the generation question and looking at the top attractors. So again, even looking across generation, better pay, top attractor. Job security comes in the top of the list across all, including for the millennials. Wanting to use existing skills in the top 3 across all generations. Where we started to see some differences, and again, these are kind of predictable with what you would expect relative to where people are in their career stage. So better career development opportunities, that was number 2 for the millennials, and somewhat less important for millennials, 74% of them said this was a very important attractor. For Generation X, 68% said it was an important attractor, and just over half of our baby boomers picked career development as an important attractor for a new job. Other areas where we started to see some generational differences, flexibility in work. So millennials were valuing that a little bit more. Again, starts to drop off for the baby boomers in particular. Less than half, 44%, indicated that flexible work arrangements are a top attractor for them. And then company brand, also more important for the younger generations, earlier career than for the later career stage folks. Again, some consistency on those top factors, a few differences that correspond as you would expect with career stage. Okay, so we looked at the factors that could potentially pull someone towards something new. What about the factors that influence whether they want to stay where they are? So for this part of the study, we took a subset of our sample, and specifically those people who indicated that they had voluntarily left their previous job. And we wanted to understand the reasons that drove that decision. So I think there's a pretty common understanding or assumption or perception that a lot of people leave their jobs because they're not happy with their manager. We found that while that was the case for some of our respondents, it was actually a relatively small percentage. Only 14% of our respondents said that the reason they left their previous job voluntarily was because of their manager. And in fact, the top reasons were simply being unhappy with the job itself. So things like, oh, my job's boring, or the working conditions aren't safe, those sorts of things. And then personal reasons, child care responsibilities, grappling with a health issue, spouse relocation, those types of things. So about 40% of the sample chose those reasons, being unhappy with the job or personal reasons, as the top reasons why they left their previous job. Again, some people are leaving because of their manager, but not a huge proportion. Some of the other reasons, about a fifth of the sample, said they left because they were unhappy with the organization itself, or because their organization was going through some changes that was creating some uncertainty. So they felt it was time to go. Okay, so those were the reasons why people chose to leave their previous job. We also wanted to focus in on what are the things that are actually keeping people where they are. And we looked at 2 factors in particular, one employee experience and the other employee engagement. Employee experience refers to the perceptions that employees have about their day-to-day work experiences. So it's the result of all the various ways that they interact with their organization on the job that kind of accumulate and form these perceptions. Employee engagement refers specifically to how employees feel about the organization they're working for. It's the extent to which they care about the organization and they're motivated to contribute to their organization's success. So going a little bit deeper on each of these constructs, employee experience, we did an extensive research project in partnership with Globoforce, the social recognition provider, to define exactly what employee experience consists of. And our research revealed 5 key dimensions that make up the employee experience. Having a sense of belonging, feeling that you're part of a team or an organization, something larger than yourself. Feeling that you're working towards something meaningful, that there's purpose in the work that you do. Having a sense of achievement or accomplishment from your work. Feeling happy when you're at work and feeling energized by your work or invigorated by it. So those are the dimensions of employee experience. On the employee engagement side, IBM has a long history of helping our clients to increase employee engagement. The way that we define employee engagement consists of 4 dimensions: being proud to work for the organization, being satisfied with the organization as a place to work, being willing to recommend the organization to friends and family as a place to work, and being committed to the organization. So when we looked at these 2 factors together and looked at the impact that they have on retention, we saw a really interesting pattern emerge. So when we put these 2 constructs together in kind of a 2-by-2 matrix, what we found is that the employees who are highly engaged and are having positive experiences at work are the least likely to be searching for a new job. Only 8% of our sample who fell into that category reported that they're searching for a new job. And we refer to those as the passionate employees. They love what they're doing. They love the organization they're doing it for. In contrast, if you look at the lower left portion of the quadrant, those are what we call the apathetic employees. They're not having a good experience at work. They're not very engaged with the organization. These are the people who they're showing up, but their heart's not really in it. And in fact, we found that 29% of those folks reported that they're searching for a new job. And then to round out the matrix, for people who are highly engaged, they're very committed to their organization, but they're not having the best work experiences, we refer to those as the unfulfilled. 11% of those folks indicated that they're searching for a new job. And then finally, positive experiences, people who love what they're doing, but they don't necessarily love the organization they're doing it for. We refer to those as the detached group, and 18% of those folks are looking for a new job. So employee experience matters, employee engagement matters. When you've got both strong and positive, that's your best outcome. You're least likely to lose people, and that's where you want most of your employees to be, in that passionate matrix. Or quadrant, excuse me. So taking all of these research findings into consideration, I'd like to suggest some practical steps that you can use to apply these findings to better retain talent. So number 1, make sure that you're hiring the best fit people in the first place. And a great way that you can do that is by using valid selection assessment instruments to make sure that you've got the right skill fit as well as the right culture fit to your organization. Once you've got people on board, you want to make sure that you're listening to them regularly and you're gathering their feedback and their input and understanding what kind of experiences they're having as they're working for you. And very, very importantly, make sure that you act on that feedback. Understand what individuals' needs are and use that insight to create positive and engaging experiences for folks. And then finally, meet your own employees, top attractors, particularly your top talent. If people are really attracted to better career development opportunities, the ability to expand their skill set, to take on new, exciting, challenging work, give them those opportunities right within your organization so they don't have to search for it elsewhere or have it come to them and be attracted to it elsewhere. And with that, I am delighted to turn it over to Linda, who's going to go through some more detailed action steps that you can take.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. That was awesome. So TalentGuard spent a lot of time studying this research and other reports by IBM around employee engagement and retention so that we could identify key insights from these reports and trends that could directly influence our product roadmap as an organization. And really, our goal was to identify new and innovative ways to increase engagement and retention within the clients that we were working with. So what we did is we collaborated with about 5 or 6 organizations and work with them to come up with what we would call a predictive retention model and see if we could generate a true ROI based on some of the strategies that we put together, combining both IBM and TalentGuard's offerings within these organizations. And my goal today is to share some of what we did based on this research in hopes that you can use this information to improve your own internal processes. Now, we heard from Sherry's research, right? People need to belong, to have a sense of purpose in their job. They want their job to make sense to them. And if we can do that, they are less likely to leave for a better opportunity, right? Where they can be challenged and further develop new skills. So despite our best intentions, what we've seen is that employees still feel that their skills are underutilized at work. Managers still feel that their teams don't have the right skills to grow the business. So there's still a disconnect. And even more so, as Sherry said, when there's a lot of change going on in an organization, employees are not prepared for these challenges. So if you think about any kind of transition that your organization has had, both positive and negative. So you might be having rapid growth because you're doing extremely well in the market. Maybe you're having a downsizing or a merger. Typically, with significant events like this comes the need to move people around, oftentimes putting people in roles that they've never held, they're not yet ready for. And in these cases, employees need to learn a lot of new skills. Maybe they weren't not able to practice some of those skills in the role that they were in. Maybe it's something that they've never even tried over the course of their entire career. So these individuals must become learners again and become proficient very quickly in these new skill areas. So with all of this change, how can we as organizations do a better job of helping employees understand their skills, their expertise, their values and interests, and connect them with work that makes sense to them and also benefits the business? And what we have found as an organization working with clients going through these changes is that jobs often don't make sense to people because they are loosely defined in the workplace. We see that, every time an employee will change job from one manager to the next, that job role definition can change as well without any, formal documentation of how that's shifted. So roles are not really what I would say standardized or transparent across HR initiatives so that employees can have access to what is expected of them at their fingertips. And rarely, if you're a manager, you know this as well, rarely do you as a manager or as an employee pay attention to my job description once I'm hired on. I might pay attention to it as I'm trying to be hired because I want to look like I'm the perfect fit for the role. But very, very seldomly do I go back to look at that job description over time and say, am I doing what is expected of me, what is expected of the organization, what my manager expects of me? Oftentimes, that's just not happening for the reasons that I've mentioned above. So if people don't know what is expected of them, it's very difficult to find meaning in their work because they're always guessing what is expected of them. So how do we solve this? Well, what we have found in the organizations that we've been working in is that the use of standardized job roles is the first step. However, what we also realized, having gone through multiple implementations, is that the chore of creating job roles at the depth needed to power all of these HR processes internally is extremely daunting. It's very time consuming and it can be very costly. And IBM understood this challenge and created an offering to eliminate the need to create and update job role data. And TalentGuard also understood this data because we couldn't deploy technology if we didn't have some of that job role data defined. So one of the questions when we went to IBM is how can we leverage an offering that you already created We don't want to use spreadsheets. It's extremely difficult to update, 500 job roles in a spreadsheet and have everybody contribute to those job roles. So TalentGuard made a strategic investment to embed all of IBM's competency and job role content into our talent management data model so that it could be more consumable by companies. Now, by combining two best-in-class offerings, we're able to serve that as a foundation for companies to automate the process of standardizing the job roles. And when we do that, what we're able to do is then standardize how we assess individual strengths and weaknesses, how we analyze company gaps, and how we can give the gift of a true career path, which was, one of the outcomes of the research that IBM did. Now, Burson reports that only 23% of organizations use competency-based job roles and do competency-based talent management. That number is shocking to me. I don't understand why there is not 100%. But we know that instead of spending 2 years of your time, which we've seen, basically what we've seen on average is for every 1,500 job roles, you're spending about 1.5 to 2 years building that data out. We just recommend that it's best to adopt a best-in-class model and iterate rather than develop your model. So simply put, competency-based job roles provide the knowledge of what skills are required for job success. That enables employees to see a true picture of the skills needed for their current role and for future job success. And then managers can see and assess employees' strengths and gaps and then be able to coach them effectively in their careers. So we're bringing together some of those constructs that Sherry talked about earlier, and that's simply foundation number one. So the next step she talked about, that second construct, was employee engagement. So I want to be great at the work I'm asked to do and know that it has impact. I want to have pride. So how can we truly take care of employees if we know so little about them? The foundation of a better employee experience and of improved employee engagement lies with personalization. So in order to deliver a personalized experience, we need to know and offer many touch points to learn as much as we can about them from the moment that we hire them. So today you probably offer many different hiring assessments. You probably offer team building assessments, leadership assessments, 360 assessments. But quite often I ask, well, who has access to these assessments? Is it just the HR team? Is it only the recruiting team? Do managers have access to those post-hire assessments? Do employees get to see those assessments? I know as a manager, I rarely had access to any of the pre-hire assessments. So I couldn't see the outcomes because it was against the policy. Only the recruiting team could see that. Well, what we also know is that many team leaders attempt to learn more about their individual employees and their team as a collective asset. They host team building sessions, they do group assessments, but what else do we know? Every time those assessments are done, they sit in a drawer. That information never gets disseminated to the next manager that takes on that employee. And really, as an employee, do I really, go back and look at where are my strengths and weaknesses? What if we could personalize an experience that enables employees to express and share their skills and their values and their aspirations and their personality, their motivators in real time? And what if we could make this information transparent, available all of the time? We could also have some privacy settings. That would be awesome, right? I know I would like to have that information. If you look at what LinkedIn has done to enable that type of data, they've done a really good job at that. So we can share, employees can share information, people can share information all day long about who they are. Now, if you look at one of the things they've done in the skills area, employees can now add skills to their profile and they can get endorsed. It happens to me all the time. But am I truly good at the things that I put in my profile? Well, I might think so. Are the people endorsing me, most who I've never met before, are they a good judge of my skills? Probably not. So how do you as an employer know? How does a manager know that an employee is truly good at their job? Well, we talked about having the right job role data. That is the first step. But having that data is only the beginning. Employees have to be assessed against their current role and against any future job role, right? Seems feasible. But is an employee's self-assessment enough? Will it be too subjective? Does the manager's assessment of an employee's skill help? Yeah, probably to some extent. So you're probably thinking the 360 is a better tool. You're right, it is a better tool. But we're having a lot of people provide subjective input on a 360 assessment. Again, it's going to sit in a drawer. It's not shared with anyone. And usually when we're doing 360 assessments, it's not against our own job role. It's against some future leadership position. So it still doesn't give us a true view of whether or not someone is good for the role that they're in or will be good for a future role. So what if we could know for sure? Would that information be useful to help employees better develop skills? Could it help managers better coach employees? And would it have an overall impact to the organization? Those are just some of the questions that TalentGuard wanted to answer as we deployed this model in organizations that wanted to know the same answer. So we shared that vision with IBM, and they had an offering called, their IBM Talent Assessments, which they used most often with pre-hire. But those assessments are really good. And I wanted to build a use case where we could use them, not for pre-hire, but where we may be able to take them at pre-hire and then use them throughout the entire employee development cycle. So the model kind of worked like this. We used IBM's talent frameworks to conduct the job-based assessments using either the Likert type rating scale or a behavioral anchored rating scale, the bars. And then these assessments were typically done by an employee and a manager. And that wasn't enough because our customer said, well, we want to know more. We want it to be more objective because we're making some really impactful decisions on certain initiatives for the organizations. We have to have more predictive insight into whether or not employees can actually perform in their job. And if we move them to a new role, that they're going to be set up for success. So what TalentGuard did is instead of offering disjointed methods of assessment at hiring and during onboarding and then in career development and then in performance management, we actually bridged the two together. And this is the way that we did that. In this example that you see here, we're serving up a job-based bars assessment, and we're using the 4 proficiency levels served up by IBM. And in this example, you can see the employee has rated themselves one way. They believe they're at a working experience level. The manager rated the employee a different way. They rated them at a basic level of expertise. So there is a gap there between what the employee thinks and what the manager thinks. So we wanted a better way to bridge the gap beyond just a simple conversation. So what we also knew about this role was that there was a lot of HTML expertise required of it. So we were able to connect a skill instrument within IBM's assessment library so that we could actually test somebody against the minimum expectations of how somebody would perform if they had to use that skill every day in their job. And that assessment here is to the right. So there's about 30 to 40 questions depending on the assessment so that we could really know, does this employee fall at a working experience level? Are they at a basic level? Is the employee super excited about their skill, or does the manager not know enough about HTML to know where does the employee truly fall? Now, what we also realized is that it wouldn't make any difference if they took that assessment if there wasn't an easy way to serve up the data. So we also knew that we needed to make the information accessible, transparent, and social. So what we did is we said, all right, we're going to serve up this information. The center of the universe is in this employee's talent profile. So what you can see here are the skills required of the job. This is based on IBM's talent framework. We have the proficiency scale. We have the target. So where do I need to be in the job role? Where did the employee assess themselves? And then we could see here to the right, we call it the layering of credibility. The employee can self-assess. The manager can self-assess. We can invite 360 feedback and see that. But more important, we wanted to get predictive and we wanted to get more objective. So when we initiated that assessment to test against HTML as an example, we can see the output of that with the score. And then if the manager or anybody else, if it's public, wants to drill into that data, we can truly see where do we need to help this employee develop based on the instrument provided by IBM. So this level of credibility takes the guesswork out of knowing which employees possess specific skills. It helps us to have more predictive outcomes and know who matters. And we are balancing that with social feedback via some of those endorsements. So we're hitting on those 3 key points that Sherry mentioned in her research under the guidance. But it doesn't stop there. Right now, how do you bridge that employee experience construct and the employee engagement construct together to help those employees develop professionally, right? What are those top attractors? And as a former career coach, and I've coached thousands of people, I do fundamentally believe that every person possesses a unique distribution of skills and knowledge and behavior that enables someone to perform at an optimal level in one job or another job, provided that his or her talents are identified, cultivated, and liberated. Now, what we are seeing, CEB research, current trends, is that employees, because of flatter organizations and changes in the industry, are staying in their job role 30% longer. So that's limiting some of the opportunity for vertical growth. So we as organizations have to find more creative ways to help employees develop skills in their existing jobs, or maybe skills for temporary assignments. Otherwise, employees are not going to be passionate up in that upper quadrant. So we as companies need to create better career touch points that focus on what I'm going to say capability-based experiences. So up until recently, no mechanism existed to help companies enable employees to express their career desires, to truly be self-directed in their skill development, to see what their gaps are, to fill those gaps, and to share their aspirations with their manager, with other HR coaches, and the organization overall. So I believe that organizations need to shift to building pentathletes. And what I really mean by that is, instead of developing individuals for specific roles, why don't we help employees develop multiple skills that can be shared across roles? And then when they're doing their career pathing, if we focus on the skill development side, we can help employees get ready for many roles and not just one. Now, that really, it really exists in what we call a career pathing experience. And in a career pathing experience, what we really want to do is make it easy for employees to see, what could my next role be? How could I build out many steps in a career path that will enable me to see a line of sight from where I am now to some future job role? And when we have a standardized framework with which employees can compare themselves where they are today to where they are tomorrow, and we know a lot of information about all of those roles, we can leverage technology to automatically make recommendations on those career paths so that organizations can truly give the gift of a career path. So the third component of a predictive retention model is being able to serve up ways for employees to seek new and broader career experiences, assess their skill gaps, automatically see the development options that are required for them to close those gaps, and then connect with mentors, and also see which roles are critical to the organization so that the organization can guide employees on the things that also matter to them. So bridging those two perspectives together so that organizations are developing the talent that they need and employees are working on the things that they want to work on them that help them have a meaningful career experience with your firm. Now, Sherry mentioned earlier that organizations, those top attractors, focus not just on skills and challenging work, but You know, those manager relationships are important. They're not leaving because of managers. So maybe they are staying because of managers. So how can we begin to connect employees with people who have traversed the same career paths that they're interested in, and connect them with mentors that can truly guide their career experiences in an authentic way? Well, we serve it up through a personalized career experience that exposes that information. And the only way you can do that is if you have an ability to track career history in the infrastructures that you are building and supporting within your own OD environments. Now that the groundwork is paved, how can we truly know before we go? And the fourth component of the model really relies on IBM Talent Insights powered by Watson and TalentGuard's data. Now, we did a really cool pilot with a large global organization where it hadn't been done before. So we wanted to assess the impact of how the two technologies could impact predictive retention. The core questions we really wanted to know are: can I predict what a good hire looks like? Can I anticipate why talent might leave? Can I take proactive actions before they go? And how can I use these insights and share it with my leaders so that we can reduce turnover costs and increase our engagement scores? Now, some of the data that we started to look at, and this is just one screenshot of that, is how can we compare, for example, the level of competencies required of a job to what we actually have by individual, by department, by job family, by country? Then how can we break that down by various different demographics? Maybe the demographic is age, maybe it's by male or female, maybe it's those millennials versus those who's retiring. How can we drill into that data to then see, what makes these individuals awesome? When we're hiring, when we're developing, is there a connection between people with high cognitive ability and people who have been hired from certain degree programs who get certain performance reviews, or who are chasing certain career paths? So being able to ask Watson questions in your natural language about your data is proving to be, it's even more powerful than I thought it could be. I mean, sometimes I'm thinking to myself, I had no idea that, it could serve up the data and the insights that it is. So that fourth pedestal really is a catalyst for driving some of that predictive talent insight and retention on the information that you're gathering and gaining across your entire career path continuum. So I think that's super important. So Sherry, I'm going to ask you to chime in again on the role of meaningful work in retention.
Yeah, absolutely, Linda. So going back to the research that I mentioned earlier around employee experience, not only did we want to understand what employee experience is, but we wanted to give managers tools or levers that they can pull to help improve employee experience. And we looked at a series of these levers or drivers. And what we found is that the one that really stood out was meaningful work. That consistently had the highest impact by far on people's employee experience, and therefore plays a key role in retention as well. So in terms of meaningful work, people really want to see that there's consistency between the work that they're doing and the organization's core values. They want to see that their work matters, that it's mutually beneficial to them as well as the organization. And they want to know that they're making a difference. So by helping people to see that connection between the work that they're doing and the larger purpose served by the organization can really go a long way in improving experience at work. Okay, and as Linda discussed, there are very practical, actionable things you can do, actions you can take, and proven tools available to help your employees really understand how they can develop their skills, how they can build their careers, even in a changing world and a constrained world. So we also really it all comes down to, does all of this matter? Does all of this pay off? The research would suggest a resounding yes to that question. So going back to that 2x2 matrix and the passionate employees, in addition to the passionate employees being the least likely to be looking for a new job, our research also found that those are your highest performers, and those are also your people who are willing to give their most, to go above and beyond and put in discretionary effort at work. So again, you really want to move as many of your employees to that passionate column as you possibly can. And in terms of other outcomes, looking at even the bigger picture, our own research as well as external research has found that there is a connection between employee experience and employee engagement and financial outcomes of organizations, and specifically in terms of earnings per share. So organizations that do create these high engagement situations and positive experiences, when we rate organizations according to how they're seen as a great place to work, those that are rated that way show a 34% increase in earnings per share. So really quite compelling. And the numbers around voluntary turnover, 71% lower voluntary turnover for the highly engaged, 73% more likely to go above and beyond that discretionary effort for positive experiences, 32% more likely to be a high performer. So having passionate employees clearly pays off.
Awesome. Thank you, Sherry. So what's next? We would invite you to read the white paper. If you'd like to request a demo of some of the things that you've seen today, we can do that for you as well. But without further ado, Sherry and I are available to answer any questions that you may have for us on the content that we've shared today. And I'm just going to take a minute to open the panel and look through these questions. And I will read the question first. Okay, let's see. Sherry, I think this one might be for you. Do you think that the speed of the world now contributes to the newer generation's apparently lack of patience in career development or increased level/speed of boredom at work?
Wow, that's a great question. I think it's a little bit early to perhaps answer that question, as the newer generations come up who have really been inundated with technology that I'm seeing today in my own kids and others. But based on the research that we've seen, again, we're really not seeing generational differences in terms of more impatience. It seems to be a bit more of a myth. And if you recall back to the findings, career development opportunities certainly were up there in importance for Gen Xers, almost as much as for the millennial generation. It's really towards the end of your career path where maybe you're not looking for new career development opportunities, or you're looking to kind of decelerate, where you'd start to see that as less of importance. So certainly I think it's a question that still remains to be researched a little bit further, but the evidence so far suggests that there's not that much difference between people who are in this crazy hyper world versus those who've been in the job market for a while. Excellent.
And then we have another question, Sherry. Is understanding the consequence of good work and bad work in combination with how work fits into the company's purpose valuable to employees in the context of what you describe as engagement?
So I'm not sure I understand good work versus bad work, but in terms of people seeing the connection between the work that they're doing and whether it's valued by the organization, absolutely. If there's a disconnect there, people are less likely to be engaged, and certainly that employee experience is less likely to be positive.
Great, thank you. And Stephen, if you have more clarifications around that, please feel free to submit another question. Martino asks, where can you get a sample of the libraries? I'm happy to show that to you if you just hit that request demo link. That will just lead to a talent advisor on our side, and we can help you there. let's say, is it possible for HR with TalentGuard to be more proactive and to personalize the answer when an employee is at risk to leave? That's a great question. When it can, through these talent insights, we can drill into a lot of different detail. Even within Talent Guard's assessment, where employees can, there's an open area where employees can talk about the things that they're feeling. All that data you can query on. I think we'd have to understand in a little bit more detail what it is what factors are important, because it might be something that's already something that we can query on in a standard way. So I definitely want to explore that in more detail with you, Jean. Okay.
And Linda, what I would add to that also is what you can do with the predictive analytics is look at characteristics of people who are your highest risk to leave, and see if you can identify, who those which of your employees match those characteristics, have some conversations with their managers to provide some coaching and kind of just open up the conversation. So it can give you some guidance of where to maybe be alert for some concerns.
That's excellent, Sherry. That's true. Okay, a question from Jose. If work is to become nomadic in the future, i.e. project-based, and retention is a problem, and we focus only on the organization, how can we really capitalize by knowing more about their career expectations without another meta system? That's probably something you could answer and I could answer. Do you have some thoughts on that, Sherry?
Well, I'll start out, and then if you could add to it, Linda, that would be great. So I think this idea of the independent workforce and more people moving to that type of a work situation, I think is an important one, because those people are very much a part of the organization as your regular employees. So we would suggest that it would be in your best interest to treat those employees, to the extent that the law allows you to, similarly to other employees, including listening to their voice and their needs, so that you can address their particular unique concerns as well.
Yeah, and we've seen this in project. We do a lot with project-based organizations, and that's why when I was saying earlier, let's try to focus on skills and helping even project-based employees develop more skills so that they can be used across a lot of different assignments. Not so much the focus on the job role, because it is a little bit more transient where, in these project-based organizations, you're coming in and out of certain project work. You may be assigned on one initiative, then you get assigned on another. Sometimes the work's the same, sometimes the work's the different. So if you can take stock of what that future upcoming project looks like, understand the skills that are required for those projects, and then be able to look at your employees based on who has what skills and be able to assign employees based on those skills. I just think it makes it much easier. Now, whether or not you need another system, I don't know what systems you have, but I don't know how to do it any other way than through automation, because that's certainly something very, very difficult to manage via a spreadsheet, because it's such a moving target. Yes, the webinar is being recorded and it will be available for download. I just wanted to answer that. Okay, let's say, if you know another employee is looking for another job, is it ever too late to employ the retention strategies discussed? Sherry, you want to attempt that one?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the specific situation. I would not assume that it's too late. It kind of depends on how far in their mind they've kind of gone down that path of looking for something else. But I would say once a person has made that decision that they are attracted to something else and they're going to take it, it's very hard to turn them around at that point. So I wouldn't invest effort there as much as really trying to get out in front, look for the early warning signs, which you can pick up through your listening methods and so forth, and try to take action earlier on.
Yeah, I would ditto that. We've seen in organizations, as a career coach, even beyond, the technology here that I operate, as a career coach, I worked with a lot of people going through transitions, and they would be people who didn't necessarily want to leave their organization, but felt no hope, felt that they couldn't make any transitions internally, had no way to do that. And I've literally worked with people who have left an organization because the company is very large, they got out of one business unit, left the company to get into another business unit because they could not make the transition internally. So they had to leave the organization and get rehired back into the same company, but in a different business unit. And that really is just a shame. And I agree with Sherry. When somebody is ready to leave or somebody says they're going to leave, even if they really don't want to, they feel that it's the only way that they're going to be able to make progress forward. And that's really hard to turn around. Okay, so here's another question. Who should be in charge of talent retention? The talent manager or the team leads? You want to try that one, Sherry?
I would say it's a team effort. I don't think you can abdicate responsibility on one side or the other. I think a centralized team, your HR professionals and so forth, with the centralized data that Linda's been talking about, give you the tools and the insights to look for issues and concerns and so forth. And you really need to work with the team leaders, the managers, in order to be able to address them together.
Yeah, yeah. I really think engagement and experience is something that managers, HR, and executives are all responsible for because it's our collective organization. So, I think those are great points. One other question here, and I just want to make sure we end timely. We do have a quick survey at the end. If LinkedIn is focused on the past and talent is focused on the future, what would next steps be for a talent system? I'll start with that one. I'm not even sure if LinkedIn is really so much focused on the past. I think people try to keep their skills current. But I do believe that if you're going to take a forward-looking, if you're going to think forward, right? And on LinkedIn, it's heavily geared toward recruitment. Recruitment is heavily geared towards someone probably leaving their organization looking for another opportunity. The way that you do that is you have to enable employees to be able to express themselves, meaning I want to be in X job in this company, in this division or this business unit. That is a forward progressive step, right? So you have to enable employees to be able to express if they're interested in a particular career path. A career path may or may not have an associated job vacancies. That's independent, right? But if employee is interested in something, they're going to want to start developing the skills and the experiences and the qualifications toward that particular job family or job role. So the best thing that you can do is to help employees better understand the kinds of jobs you have, or jobs, I mean in career job roles, not just vacancies, in your organization, expose what it takes to get into those roles, enable employees to compare themselves against that future state and allow them to develop. Because as Sherry said, one of those attractors is that we need the ability to be challenged and we need the ability to develop new skills. So there has to be a mechanism so that employees can do that. Sherry, anything else there that you would add?
Yeah, I think your focus on skill development is spot on, Linda. And I think from the employee perspective and for all of us, I think really the key to success in this constantly changing world is the willingness to learn new skills as well. So expressing the interest to do so, finding those opportunities, helping our employees to find those opportunities, and the willingness to continually learn something new. We can't predict what skills are going to be needed 5 years out, 10 years out, but that willingness to learn and that ability to learn will be key.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay. So we're just about coming up at the top of the hour. If, we'll wait here a minute, 30 seconds or so to see if anybody else has any questions. If not, I want to thank Sherry for her time today. I think the research is fascinating, and I do encourage you to download that. Again, request a demo if you're interested in learning more about the frameworks, the assessments, the career pathing tool. We want to thank you all today for your time and attention and all of your great questions. This webinar will be available for download off of TalentGuard's site probably by tomorrow morning. It just depends on how quickly the marketing team can process that. But I want to thank you very much. And it looks like no other questions are coming in, so we can call it a wrap.
Great. Thank you very much, Linda. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Excellent. Thank you.